Good morning. Good morning indeed. I think today is Tuesday. Tuesday, September 19th. We got new paintings today, man, but to be completely honest, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be painting today. That's frankly the case most of the time. One of the things that I kind of enjoy about, I guess, just the way that I work in general is figuring out like the day's image the day of. Oh, this line is freaking devious, bro. I have to make a quick turnaround. Oh, brother. Oh, I see you're trying to cut in front of me, dude. You're trying to get ahead. That's not going to happen. Yeah, so I normally don't know what I'm going to paint unless it's like a big thing and I've kind of been planning the project for some time. Otherwise, I like to just get in there when it's time to paint something and then kind of figure out what I'm working with for, you know, the next couple of days or whatever. What I do know at this point is that it's most likely going to be a cat image, and it's most likely going to be 24 by 30. So that does give me a pretty good set of constraints to work in. Aside from the cats, I'm looking at some more fire stuff, primarily because it's like a lot of fun to paint. So I've got a pretty good set of constraints to work in. I'm looking at some fire stuff too, like I mentioned. The screens and the fire, they all kind of have this same sort of luminous quality to them, which is always very fun to work in. And I'm trying to see if there's any crossover with the cat stuff too. You know, maybe cats with screens, cats doing something devious with a fire or something like that. Like the previous, you know, the pervert, that was a good example of a cat with a screen. There's, you know, even looking at maybe some gaming setup kind of things with the cats would be cool. I'm just kind of having fun with these, man. So I'm still pushing through on them. I also want to. There's another practice makes perfect one, like the tennis cat ones. And the idea with those is like the first one was titled Practice Makes Perfect. The second one was titled Practice Still Makes Perfect. And the third one, and as they go, I think it's just going to be similarly titled, but just kind of getting more ridiculous as it goes. And I think for me, this is kind of like one way to address this like idea of like a series, you know, which is, I feel, can be very constraining to artists. Yes, ma'am. Can I please get a large unsweet tea refill?
Any brownies or pastries, please?
No, ma'am. Just the tea. Thank you. What was I saying? Fuck. What was I saying? I have to turn the video off and check it. Right, got it. Okay, practice makes perfect. So as the series continues, the titles are going to kind of become more absurd, which I think for me is sort of like a commentary on the idea of like the series itself, which again, as I mentioned before, I had a fucking brain fart. I feel is sort of like a constraining thing to artists. It's something that, you know, like people like, you know, shit that looks the same, unfortunately. And that's kind of like it's something that is an imposition on artists a lot of the times, you know, because I think if we were just kind of given free reign, I think a lot of artists would just produce one-offs every fucking day. Like it would just be something different, something new, something weird. And if we were given that freedom, like market-wise, that's the way things would work. I think my strategy is to kind of just give myself that liberty by creating a multitude of different series. I still have to create series, but I have a lot of freedom, especially working with such an amazing gallery. They really don't give me shit about like switching things up so much, you know, and that's like probably, I would say, one of the best things about Unit London is that I don't get shit about anything about like, you know, make this and make that or da-da-da. It's just like, you know, fucking do what you do. And that's like, you know, one of the coolest things. So with the Practice Makes Perfect series, you know, it's like this kind of repetitive thing that gets more and more absurd, and it kind of just references the idea that like after you get to a certain point of a series, when it's fucking done and you've made your entire goddamn living off of like doing the same shit over and over, well, guess what? You got to keep fucking doing it ad nauseum for the rest of your fucking life. And I can see how, you know, maybe, you know, and hey man, like if you enjoy that, like fuck yeah, like that's badass. I don't. I don't not enjoy it, I guess. It's just I would if it was up to me, I would like, you know, be an ethereal fucking art fairy, just like, you know, making whatever I want. But we live in a real material world, and there's people that have, you know, fucking preferences, and that's all good. And so the best thing we can do as artists is, you know, try to, as much as we can, work halfway, meet halfway, compromise to some degree. So the way I do that, again, is like I make series that make fun of series, you know, and that's like that's my way of like, I guess, simultaneously coping with and trying to change that reality in a small way, which is the best I can do. And very fortunately for me, I have a gallery that supports me throughout all of those endeavors. So that's something I'm going to be looking at, you know, a little bit later. But for today, we're going to get back in the studio after I get this motherfucking tea. And we're going to look at what kind of images we've got laying around. And then we're going to get started on some new shit. So let's get this tea and get the fuck out of here. All right, we got the modular studio in action. Going to be stretching, or rather cutting some canvas, and I like using the edge of the wall just kind of as a guide to butt things up against and make sure that my corners are basically square. You know, there's nothing worse than stretching a canvas and it's all lopsided, etc. That sucks. So this is just one way to keep it nice and square. Butt it up against the wall. Use you can use a 90-degree angle or just a ruler, and then measure out and cut. Now I'm basically creating a template. Since I'm going to be working on several of these paintings, I'm using a guide, a level and a ruler to basically map out where they're going. Oh, busted! Projectorino, motherfucker can't draw. Oh my god. This part, I mean, I would say is pretty self-explanatory. There's not a whole lot to explain here. Sometimes the projector will go off midway, which kind of sucks. So don't let people tell you, man, using a projector is all fun and games, dude. I have to balance the projector, I have to make sure it's tilted right, you know? This shit ain't easy, okay? Now, for the first time, I'm simultaneously giving you guys a look at the color and the painting at the same time, or the palette rather. And I'm making a very basic mixture of the different color groups. So for the cat itself, it's just going to be 3-4 colors, and that'll basically represent the entirety of it. And then I'm mixing the background and the chair colors. Everything after that will be mixed just kind of on the fly. And so getting started here, I'm not worried too much about precision. Obviously we used a projector, so that takes care of a lot of it. But even within that, I try to just, you know, essentially color outside the lines if necessary, etc. I don't stick to that drawing too much. It's more of a guide, and I do like to kind of mess it up to some degree, you know, and introduce a little bit of chaos and some wonk to it. And one thing that I like to remember, with at least with organic shapes, or maybe just, it actually I guess varies from subject to subject, but for me it's important not to just butt colors up against each other, especially, you know, because you're using a projector, and so you tend to separate things with lines. And so when you're using a projector and then painting afterwards, the tendency oftentimes can be to just put colors like right next to each other, which isn't always the best way. And with the cat, for instance, you really want to start blending the things into each other, not in like a clean kind of blend gradient kind of way, but more in like a sloppy overlap kind of way. And with the chair, also just basically two values, a dark and then a mid-tone. And I'll worry about, you know, highlights and stuff like that later, since I'm very far from that step at this moment. So I'm not worried too much about little details. And even a lot of the details that I traced over, even a lot of the details that I traced, I'm just painting right over them because I know I can come back to them. And especially with all of the little tears in the chair, once we figure out the sort of meta to how this detail works, we'll be able to just basically put them anywhere, and figuring out the meta, we'll be able to have a lot more control, and we can sort of generate that look wherever we want it and not have to stick to the reference so tightly. Everything in the background is getting an even looser treatment than everything else because it's receding, and so it's not as important to the eye, and so you kind of want to throw it. It would be like it's essentially the painterly version of a blur. When I start painting, however, all of the cushioning and stuff coming out of the chair, that's going to be one area where I'm going to be very conscious of not blending, because those are very clearly defined borders, whereas the fur of a cat, you know, it's not so much a clearly defined border. Things sort of blend into each other naturally. So here I'm manually mixing on the fly all of the cushioning from the chair that's coming out, and as you can see, I'm being very careful not to blend too much. And as you can see, man, like, it's already starting to look like what the fuck we want it to look like, and that's the best thing we could possibly hope for. And it's a really good day one. So day one of this painting that I'm going to be calling Purrformance art is in the books, and tomorrow's workload is going to be just building right on top of what we laid today, the foundation that we laid today. We're just going to be building right on top of it and continuing forward, man. If there's any major takeaway from today, I would say that precision is important with color and value, not so much with the drawing. Again, we used a projector to get everything exact, but even then, it's good to loosen up, introduce some wonky wonk, and just keep having fucking fun. Okay, so we worked the first layer a little bit more opaquely than I normally do. Normally it's like a more of a washy layer, but today is a little bit more opaque. And that's because I wanted to have a good sense of what the values were, because when you work very washy, you allow a lot of the white canvas from underneath to come out, and so that can skew your assessment of the values. So working a little bit more opaquely is going to give you, again, a nice overview of where you're at just getting started. So that's the takeaway today, and I'll see you fucking tomorrow, dude, bright and early. Let's go.